Alexander Usyk just knocked out Daniel Dubois in 5 rounds about an hour or so ago, and it was one-way traffic. It was really incredible to watch. I have to do a separate video on the brilliance of Alexander Usyk. Well, look, the brilliance. We already know he's brilliant. We know he's phenomenal. We know he's a legend, all-time great, etc. And it's all good stuff. But this performance in particular, this was different class, even by Usyk standards, which are through the roof. It really is. When he fought Fury the first time, and you could tell it rattled Fury a little bit. All the bravado Fury was coming out with, this, that, and the other, Alexander Usyk just said, "Don't worry, I will not leave you alone." That was it. I mean, that was just, that was that. That was it. It was done. You could tell Fury was like, "Oh crap." When he went to Don Charles, and that was aimed at the whole of Team Dubois in the press conference on Thursday, "Don't push the horses." Now, I have to hold my hands up. Even I was kind of like, huh? What did he mean by that? I would loosely interpret that to me, and probably in the UK and Ireland, we would say, "Don't poke the bear." Because you poke the bear, he is going to absolutely rip your flipping head off. And I would interpret that's Usyk's way of saying it. And Usyk had that look on his face, serious, but at the same time look on his face of, "That's what I mean. Don't mess with me." And you were like, "Oh, you done went and you effed up." And at the end of the day, Dubois, not necessarily Daniel Dubois, well, yes, to an extent, but his team have only themselves to blame. They got arguably one of the best versions of Usyk we've seen in a long time. An Usyk who literally, within the first round, already had the puzzle worked out. And this was a Dubois who started this fight a lot more aggressive than he did the first fight. And within a minute and a half, Usyk had the puzzle solved. And you could kind of tell, like after the first round, you were just kind of like, yeah, he's done. You could tell. There was never a moment where you thought Dubois might. You were just like, nah, he's done. It's just a matter of when, not if. You could tell from that first round. And this, to me, all stems back to the absolute buffoonery. And I'm going to use that word, whether you like it or not, I'm going to use it. Buffoonery of Don Charles. Absolute. So, when Anthony Joshua fought Daniel Dubois last September, you got to bear in mind, I knew Dubois was trained by Don Charles. I knew some of the fighters Don Charles had trained in the past. I'd seen him with Frank Buglioni in that brilliant fight he had with Jose Burton. I think that might have been on one of AJ's undercards, actually, if I'm not mistaken. But it was a brilliant fight. It was a tremendous fight. Brilliant fight. If I haven't seen it, go and watch it. And I obviously knew he was a long-time trainer of Derek Chisora, but he was not a trainer who was, I want to say, highly sought after in the UK, if you know what I mean. He was London-based. He was a fighter. He was a trainer who you didn't really hear a lot of guys go to. But so I knew who he was as a trainer, but I'd never really seen interviews from him. I'd never really given it the time of day, to be honest with you. And then obviously AJ loses in devastating fashion to Danny Dubois in 5 rounds. And Don Charles is front and centre. And I think it was with Box Nation he gave an interview. Now, I will say in the interview he did come across as a little bit bitter with regard to Chisora and Joshua and stuff like that. But for the most part, in that interview, when I listened to it, it might have been with Hawksport, one or the other. It was one or the other. But for me, he came across as very well. I like what I was hearing. Yes, you could tell there was that bitterness towards Chisora, towards AJ, for Chisora leaving him and AJ just being friends with Chisora, stuff like that. You could tell there was that, but for the most part, he came across as quite well. And I've said several times, if ever there was a false dawn, it was that. Good Lord. After that, subsequently, we got to see what Don Charles was about. And his behaviour, in my opinion, pushed the horses. And it contributed to Alexander Usyk coming out and putting that demolition job on Daniel Dubois, quite frankly. Because me and Ade did the Look Back, which is a brilliant show we do. If you haven't ever seen it, just type in Ade and G-Man Look Back, you'll see it. And we went and we watched Alexander Usyk versus Anthony Joshua 2. It's on like 30-something thousand views now. It was great. Now, The build up to that fight, AJ was talking about what he was going to do. He was going to, a bit like with Dubois, I'm not going to let him take center ring. I'm going to do this, right? It didn't happen. Alexander Usyk won, but not without tricky. It was a tricky fight for Alexander Usyk. He won it. I scored it 8-4, but competitive the whole way through. Apart from the last 3 rounds, they were all Usyk, clearly, but it was competitive the whole way through. And what do you know about that fight? AJ in the build up to both fights, respectful, as he always is. AJ's a very respectful man. No trash talking, no bravado, no anything. I'm not going to say he was lulling them into a false sense of security, because he wasn't. That's just AJ's way. But he didn't push the horses, so to speak. Fury did. Certainly Don Charles did. And you saw what happened. You saw exactly what happened. When Don Charles is going out there with one of this is what a Christian should be in Alexander Usyk. Yes, he's flawed, but he still practices his faith. He still tries to be as good as he can be, as we all are flawed, of course. And you have the audacity to question this man's fate when he was hit low and the referee immediately ruled it low. And Alexander Usyk was clearly, and he was hit low again in this fight, and it was low in round 4. Referee gives him the 5 minutes, which is standard, it's part of the rules. And you have the audacity to say he's a liar? Say thou shalt not lie? Question his fate and say he deserves an Oscar? Really? Really, Don Charles, you're going to go and do that? And then to keep persisting with that? For Alexander Usyk to go through another hard training camp to beat Tyson Fury when he had the boxing establishment really against him in that fight as well. To have his moment with Ade coming up to Christmas in the ring, for Dubois to come straight in between him, grab the mic when Ade was like, no, Daniel, it's his moment, interrupt Alexander Usyk and all that, pushing the horses. April of this year, you have the kick-off press conference. Don Charles, how can you call yourself a Christian? What God do you believe in? I was going to say Jesus, as in Jesus Christ. Well, why would you say that? Use the Lord's name in vain, but you know what I mean. And again, you say it to Usyk, not helping. George Fox, we'll have a dust-up, we'll have a straight, I'll do whatever and this, that and the other. Seriously, people, what the hell are you doing here? As if this man needs any more motivation, because he is genuinely, as he said to Darren Barker, boxing is his oxygen, plus you're effing him off. This ain't going well. This is not what you want to be doing. And do you learn anything on fight week? Nope. You still keep pushing the horses. And this is what happens. Daniel Dubois hasn't improved under Don Charles. He hasn't. I haven't seen improvements there. I've seen improvements mentally, although in this fight they were pretty much non-existent. I've seen improvements mentally in previous fights because he's been in them. He's been able to work through what's going on. Even when he's been getting hit, he's been able to find his range and know he can get through it. That is not a physical change. It's a mental change. Fair enough. He needed it. But is that not more down to his dad Stan being in the corner? I haven't seen the slightest improvement. It's just the same fighter 2 years ago physically. And as I said previously, I said it to Ade, I was like, well, mentally I can be improved. I can be improved from 2 years ago, but if I'm still making the same mistakes physically, it ain't going to help me. Oh yeah, I'm mentally stronger. Okay, you're still making those same physical mistakes. You're still getting hit a lot, and oh yeah, you've been knocked out again. So I think with Daniel Dubois, I really don't know I really don't know what he does. I will talk about that in a separate video, but Don Charles absolutely screwed him in the run up to this fight. Any chance he had to win, which was slim enough, Don Charles pushed the effing horses. And he absolutely screwed his fighter because Usyk was coming in there gunning for him, looking for blood. And by God, he got it. So that's what I got to say on that. I've said it once, I'll say it again. I didn't think Usyk should have taken this fight. Boy, was I wrong. Shows what I know. He looked brilliant in there. But I still think that's a great way to go out. I still think it's a great way to go out. And I think fighters and trainers and managers in future, if Usyk sticks around, they will be saying, kiss his flipping feet rather than piss him off. Because we don't want that happening. Good Lord. And even someone like a Tyson Fury might look at that and think, crap. crap. That's what he's going to probably be thinking, looking at that performance. So those are my thoughts. I think Don Charles absolutely screwed his fighter with his antics in the run-up to this over the last year. And yeah, those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed the video as always, people. If you could, smash the like button, hit subscribe, of course, if you haven't already. Until next time.